Call the police, that's what the HOA president across the street yelled at 7 on a Tuesday, pointing at my wife like she'd caught a bank robber. Except my wife wasn't running or hiding or doing anything except kneeling in our front yard with dirt under her nails and a smile that smelled like wet soil and lavender. 3 minutes later, a cruiser rolled up, door opened. Boots hit the sidewalk, and the officer stopped cold, mid-stride, eyes wide, chin literally dropping. "Your Honor," he said like a kid seeing his teacher at the grocery store. The clipboard in Miranda's hand slipped, papers skittered across her perfect driveway, and I remember thinking, this is going to be one of those days you tell at Thanksgiving. Back up a beat. I'm Ethan Hale, 58, retired from 2 decades of fire and EMS in Santa Fe County. I've been smoke-soaked, snowed in, and once rescued a Labrador that did not appreciate the concept of gratitude. My wife is Rowan Municipal Court Judge, patience like rain on tin spine like rebar. We moved to Silver Sage Preserve to grow vegetables, adopt a slower heartbeat, maybe argue about salsa recipes instead of sirens. The houses here are all warm stucco and desert tans, streets named for trees the developer never planted, cottonwood, mesquite juniper. For 2 years, we were forgettable middle lots, dues paid trash cans, hidden the old Tacoma washed exactly twice. Then spring dropped a miracle. Rowan said she was tired of nursing Kentucky bluegrass that hated the altitude and drank like a teenager. She came home with trays of native wildflowers, Apache plume blanket flower penstemon plants that belonged to the high desert. The way we wanted to belong to this neighborhood without pretending to be something else. She spent weekends on her knees, sun hat, crooked humming old folk tunes, while bees worked like union crews. It felt right soft color against clay, a little rebellion that was actually restoration. Miranda Caldwell did not see it that way. She was the HOA president, retired realtor posture, like a yardstick, the kind of woman who irons her jeans and alphabetizes the contents of her shed. At 7:30 one morning, she clip-clopped up our walk, wearing perfume loud enough to set off car alarms, waved a letter that looked photocopied in 2006, and said, "Non-conforming vegetation, $200. Rowan stood, brushed dirt from her knees, and said in that steady bench voice, "Which covenant exactly?" Miranda declared. "Section 14.3, Community Aesthetic Standards," like she'd written it on stone tablets. And Rowan, who had actually read the covenants, calmly said, "Section 14.3 mentions dead plants and debris, not species or color." "I know what we meant," Miranda snapped. "Then put what you meant in writing," Rowan said, and returned to her flowers. 2 days later, the fine doubled to $400, with emergency board minutes that read like a kids' club trying to sound adult. Rowan called 3 board members. 2 were out of town, 1 was home but said he hadn't seen a notice in months. It smelled wrong. Procedures skipped power improvised, so she filed a complaint with the state's HOA Oversight Office. Nothing dramatic, just the right form in the right inbox, the way she's fixed 100 small civic messes. That's when the surveillance began. Miranda idled her white crossover at dawn camera phone, clicking at gutters and hoses, photographing our hose reel like she'd caught a smuggling tunnel. The neighbors started to notice, and so did we. And that's when Rowan did the thing that made me fall in love with her a second time. She got curious. She jogged at dusk and chatted. She asked an old veteran about tomatoes in the front yard. Yes, he got fined. A single mom about chalk art. Yes, she paid to make her driveway look like no one lived there. A widow about a bird bath. Yes, pest wildlife was the phrase on the letter. A pattern took shape like tracks after a rain. Not random violations, but quiet people, busy people, people who wouldn't push back because pushing back costs time and money. Miranda decided on a show trial. She sent a thick letter invoking the Architectural Review Committee, 3 members hearing in 48 hours, presentation required. The basement of our community center smells like old coffee and church potlucks, fluorescent lights buzzing like tired cicadas. Miranda arrived with a briefcase and a man named Roger who sells houses with her and suddenly claimed landscaping expertise. Rowan walked in wearing her robes. It sounds theatrical, but I watched the room change temperature. The posture, the courtesy, the way her name badge made everyone remember institutions larger than one person's ego. She laid out case law photos with Latin names and water usage data, a small forest of footnotes. She asked Roger whether he could tell a purple aster from a Mexican hat, and he made the same sound I once heard from a cat that fell off a porch. Then she slid aerial photos across the fold-out table and asked Miranda about her own unapproved 6'8" ornamental fence, her pond, her hot tub set 4 feet too close to the line. The committee moved to conclude before the audience's eyebrows melted. Rowan thanked them kindly and said she'd see them at the next step. A week later, every mailbox in Silver Sage Preserve held an emergency special assessment for $5,000, 30 days, no appeal, because the letter said one household's harassment had forced the HOA to hire counsel. That basement packed like an airport gate during a storm. Miranda wore a navy blazer meant to communicate competence, while a dying projector showed a giant number, $35,000 legal defense fund. Rowan stood and asked, sweet as a Sunday teacher, which lawyer had been hired. Rutherford and Ames, Miranda announced. Interesting, Rowan said. Because according to the invoices I obtained under public records, law payments were made to Caldwell Community Solutions. A ripple moved through the retirees, my favorite kind of quiet anger. Rowan held up photocopies, 8,000 for landscape consultation, during months when no landscaping had been approved, deposits matching fine dates, entries that made bankers flinch. Then she said the sentence that made the air leave the room. Also, our HOA's corporate status dissolved 18 months ago for failure to file annual reports. You can't collect assessments for an entity that doesn't legally exist. Someone whispered stealing, and someone else said it louder. And Miranda did the thing guilty people do in movies, because real life copies the script. They grabbed their briefcase and ran for the stairs. I wanted to chase her, but Rowan put a hand on my arm and said, "Let's do this the slow way. It holds better." We formed a kitchen table coalition that looked like a joke until it wasn't. Rowan at the head with legal pads, Frank the veteran with names and dates, Sarah the single mom with a talent for spreadsheets and social media receipts, me pouring coffee and making sure the printer had paper. Plan A, restore the HOA properly, new articles filed, back fees paid, an actual election, with notices that give retirees time to find their readers. Frank agreed to be interim president against his will, which is the only kind you can trust. Plan B, freeze accounts and recover money under consumer protection laws, triple damages if we could show fraudulent practices. Plan C, pull the thread past our cul-de-sac. Caldwell Community Solutions had consulted for 3 other HOAs nearby, and fraud rarely respects neighborhood boundaries. Miranda didn't go quiet, she went mean. She filed a complaint with the Judicial Discipline Commission, claiming Rowan used her position to intimidate a volunteer. She hired a private investigator who photographed our house like it had a price on it, left flyers on windshields calling my wife corrupt, and accosted me at the nursery aisle with an audience of succulents and retired couples. On Saturday, she confronted Rowan's mother, a 78-year-old, who visits every summer and bakes cookies that make me believe in heaven, and told her to control your daughter. That night, Rowan spread ethics guidelines across the table, eyes steady, voice low.